Thank you everyone for joining. We'll get started in just a second. We're going to let people fill in here. As people are coming in, going to note that the webinar does not have the chat enabled. We do have the question and answer feature enabled. So if you, as we're speaking, if you want to use that feature, which I believe is at the bottom of your screen, although it may depend on how your screen is laid out, it may be in a slightly different place. You select the question and answer button, you can ask us a question. We have staff that will be answering questions as I'm talking. I also urge you to, if you're coming in here with questions ready to go, give us a chance to talk through the webinar and see if we get to your question before putting it in there. But we'll definitely, to frame this for folks, I'm going to demonstrate some things, but there's going to be plenty of time for questions and answers as well, because the main point of today's webinar is to make sure that folks that are using organizations in CalWATRS are comfortable with how organizations work and what you need to do to be able to join them, whether it's a new organization or an existing organization that you're joining using a PIN or otherwise activating. All right, I'm going to get started here. So again, today's webinar is specifically for organizations and how they work in CalWATRS. We did go through this in our earlier webinar, but this one's focused just on that. So we're not going to go too much into the other pieces of the why, why CalWATRS was created and some of the background. We're just going to go straight into the what of what organizations need to do and what everyone needs to do to access CalWATRS in the first place. And as I said, the Q&A feature, you could put questions in as we're talking. Give us a sec to try to get through the first parts before you start throwing things in. But regardless, we'll be able to get to your questions. I'm not going to be doing a lot on a presentation because I'm just going to be showing you directly in the system how things work. So the first thing, actually, let me start with where is a good place to find information on this. If you go to our board's website, so I'll just go to the board's website overall, which you should be able to Google very quickly. It's the only downside of not having a chat in here is I would say I'd put it in the chat, but there isn't a chat. If you go to our main website, it actually is one of the first things that come up on the State Water Board's website. On our CalWATRS page, there's information on here. This is also where, just scrolling down to the bottom of it, this is where we continually are putting in our workshops and other outreach events, including this one, noting that we have an agent one afterwards. There is some overlap between how organizations work and how agents work, in that a lot of agents are also organizations. So I imagine a lot of you may be attending both of these. Also note that we have an in-person office hours in Elk Grove at the Sacramento County Farm Bureau in another couple days, if anyone has time to um, attend that one. The other thing of why I point this out is if you ever lose the where of where CalWATRS is, there's a button there that takes you directly to the CalWATRS login page. Also highlighting the guidance materials. So there is an ever-growing amount of resources on our resources material page. These top section are all PDF walkthroughs. We also have training videos where I am talking through a lot of the different parts of this. I'll highlight that the annual report ones in particular may be useful for folks because it goes page by page on how to file them out. And I believe at this point they're even chaptered, so you can jump specifically to different parts of the annual reports. There is also a PDF version of this where we go through page by page what is in the annual report. All right, so I'm going to jump right into the landing page because this is where the start. If you know, I won't dwell on this too much, but just in case you're coming in relatively fresh and haven't done anything CalWATRS with yet, the first step for anyone is creating an account. There is nothing from our old system that was carried over as far as logins and who you are coming into our system. So if you have tried to log in with credentials that you've received or that you used in our previous RMS system, or if you're otherwise trying to log in thinking that we know that you've used your email in our system before, but you've not created an account, it will not work. Something that we are working on that I'll just note here, if you, it won't stop you right now if you put in an email that is not registered in the system. It will let you try to put a password in for any email. And then when you try to put in that you forgot your password, it tells you can't reset your password. If you're getting this, just because this is something common that people are getting when they try to go in without creating an account in the first place, it's not letting you reset your password because you don't even have an account. We're working on a more finessed way to have the system remind you of this, but for right now, this is a good heads up that if you're seeing this, it's probably because you haven't created your account or you could have put in your email wrong as well. I'll give you another quick tip here. This is especially if you are working with others. If you put in an email that is in the system, there is a way to quickly check to make sure that it was put in right. Don't know if people can see that difference, but if you did put in an email that is registered in our system, you'll see it duplicate there. So if you're ever questioning whether your password is not correct, or if you even, making sure that you actually are putting in something that has an account, that's something to check for. It will repeat your password if it is something that is in our system. All right, going back to the very beginning, the first thing you need to do is create an account. This information that you fill out is for you. So everyone here is here because you're part of an organization. You're registering this so the system knows who you are on behalf of your organization. You're not putting anything about your organization in at this point. You can put in whatever mailing address you want. It does make the most sense, though, to put in your organization's mailing address. And I know organizations are a wide term, as in what is an organization. What I really mean what we mean when we say organization is anything that is not a water right that you hold in an individual name as a person. So that basically leaves everything else: trusts, LLCs, corporations, partnerships. anything else that is something where multiple people would be needing to access that account, or that there is something like employees, even if that may more accurately be in, family members in the case of a trust, that is what we consider an organization. So here you're going to fill out the information for you because this is how you're going to access our system. This last question, you do want to say that you are part of an organization. If you have already registered and you said that you're an individual, that's fine. This doesn't prevent you from joining as an organization. It really just guides you on the next steps once you are able to log in. The other thing, so I'm not going to go too much more into the registration itself. It's very generally like registering for any other website. The next steps are that when you submit your information, it will send you an email, and that email will include a link to set your password. After you set your password, you will also then need to set up your second factor authentication. Most folks are using phone. There is options for authenticators that are used on any type of smartphone, but one of the options is phone, and that phone includes both text and or a call. So it can call landlines, and it you just need to be able to hear the message that is being, it basically an automated message reads a code to you for your second factor authentication. That is the first step for everyone, regardless of whether you submitted things in a previous system or not. If you already done this step, then great, you have an account in our system. You don't need to go to create an account again. If you're having problems while creating an account, I also advise contacting us instead of trying to go to create an account again, because it will stop you if you try to use the same email twice. You can only have one account for a given email. And there's other errors that could happen if you try to continually create new accounts. So for organizations, the next step is, and I'm going to go to our public page to show an example of the letter that was sent out. Most people here should have received a letter with a PIN. That PIN and what that PIN represents is everything related to the organization that you are a part of. And I'll show an example of that really quickly. And we'll also go into more depth in this in the agent portion this afternoon, because that's where I think dealing with how the older system worked and what pins meant there is very different than what pins meant here. The main thing people should know, though, is if a pin was mailed to a specific organization, that pin is for that organization. You should not be using other people's pins. Collecting pins from other people and logging in and using them makes you become them, and that's not the intent of using the pins. There's two basic sides to the system. There is your account that you registered when you created your account, and then there is what we knew of you in our old system. These pins are to tie those two things together. Let me go in and demonstrate real quick. So what does an account look like? I'm not picking on anyone here, but just because it's an example of someone that has a lot of records in our system. So, and this is the staff side, by the way, that you're looking at. Wagner and Bonsignor is a company that it happens to also be an agent organization, but they are a organization with links to water rights. The PIN, this is the same PIN that is mailed out, and it's fine to show this because they're already joined and this PIN won't do anything for anyone else. The PIN is what links to what staff see on our side, which is that they are related to all these water rights. And because literally what the pins do is it tells you that you are able, or tells the system that the account you registered is able to see these things. The how you do that for um, organizations, I'll demonstrate because it is different if you've dealt with anyone with an individual as an individual. Um, so I'm going to mimic someone real quick, just so you could see what it looks like when you're entering a PIN. And I apologize if this is a little clunky, but it really is much easier to demonstrate live than try to just give you slides that show these things. So if I put in going to grab a random pin here because I want you to see what it looks like when I put it in. So this is what you see when you've created your CalWATRS account and you're able to log in for your first time. The point of saying that you're part of an organization is that this is the prompt that it'll give you. But this is also why if you said you're an individual, it doesn't matter because you can still get to the same location regardless. You just won't have this prompt. The main place you need to go is this account settings up here, which I'll show there's actually multiple ways to get to it. You can also get to it here. They all go to the same place. When you're in your account settings, you'll see that there's a tab called Organization Management. So if you have that letter and you have the PIN, this is the where you use that PIN. You're going to say that you are an existing party, or sorry, you're part of an existing organization, and that yes, you have a PIN. And when you put in that PIN, what it does, first, I need to find someone that hasn't come in yet. So this PIN, when you put it in, you'll see that it will show that same organization that, or at least it should be showing the organization you expect it to. And when you click submit, it will make you administrator for that organization. That is the point of having the PIN, is that it is for the first person to join the organization to automatically be linked and in charge of that organization. And when I say in charge, it's really that you now have the ability to admit others to the organization. You have the ability to control who else has access to it. Those are the main things. You also, as soon as you are linked to an organization, you are able to see that organization's record. So just really quickly, again, if you're joining for the first time as an organization, you want to go to your profile and you want to go to organization management and select that you're existing and that you have a PIN. This is for the first person to join the organization. That PIN is only works that one time. It will not work again, and it's not how anyone else that in the future that joins that organization joins. If you are the second person to join the organization, there is someone already that that has associated themselves with the organization. At that point, you want to search for that organization instead. So we happen to have one for ourselves. And so when you select that organization and select submit, what it does is it sends a request to the person that is associated with that organization that you have requested to join it. So that's the way second and any future people join that same organization. Everyone joined to an organization sees the same things, and I'll show a description of that in just a second. Part of why I mentioned it though, because some people have because they didn't have a PIN, they went to the part where they requested to join an organization, but there is nobody joined to the organization first. And the short answer is what most of you have already been doing. If you just send us a help request, the problem is if you request to join an organization that no one has been joined to yet, your request basically went into limbo, if that makes sense. It's sitting there waiting for someone to approve it, but there's no one there to approve it. So I'm going to now show you the other side of, I'm going to log in as a different user of that same organization to show you what it looks like quickly to admit someone else to that organization. So if you were that first person that joined the organization, you should have gotten an email, and there's also notifications here. You can see that the person I was logged in as before, I now see a request from them that says they want to join my organization. And what I can do is I can go in here. Again, you go to organization management. Anything to do with organizations is always going to be here. You can see it looks a little different after you are joined to it. If you are a member of an organization, but not the admin, you will just see the details and the members page. If you are the admin, which again, the admin, the only real difference for admins is that they have the ability to admit new people. This is where you will see this, and you can see at the end here, I can see this is where Jordan requested to join. You just need to click that down arrow. Most records in the system, I'll do that again real quick, sorry, just to repeat. Most records in CalWATRS from the public side have some kind of action at the end of it, where this is where you do something for that record. In this case, you're approving that this person is part of that organization. As soon as you hit approve, that person is now able to see all the records that the organization can see as well. They're basically now shared as part of that organization. And I'll dive really quickly into what that really means. So all organizations are more or less, nobody logs in as the organization itself. There is always going to be a CalWATRS account, which is why the first step is always to create an account, linked to that organization. It may be that you are the only person under that organization. It just so happens that your water rights are held in an organization name. That's fine. You don't have to have multiple people. But the water rights are held by the organization itself. Your CalWATRS account is what is connected to it, and we are connecting it to it, the first person using the PIN, any subsequent people using the request to join organization. There are more complicated setups that we can also do in here, and I'll show an example of that in just a second, where there are also organizations that have water rights under multiple names, but they are all the same organization, and everyone still needs to see the same thing. This is something where it's best to contact us to help you set it up. But once it's set up, in this example, the water rights are held by each of the branches, and the people are connected to what's called the headquarters. And you'll see it literally called headquarters and branch in your organization management tab. The point of adding people to the headquarters, but having the water rights held in branches, is that everyone connected can see all the water rights for all these different various water rights. But the water rights, the who of who owns the water rights is preserved in these branch names. And just to go one step further of an even more complicated setup that you can do there is, if there is an extremely large organization where you have a whole lot of water rights and need to assign people directly to a branch, you can also do that. So in this case, there are people that can see everything. Anyone attached to a headquarters can see all water rights associated with anything under that organization. if you had someone assigned directly to a branch, they would only see and be able to act on water rights under that branch. So I'm going to real quickly show you exactly what that looks like as a quick example, and then I'm going to pause there and start looking at questions. But I know this is maybe a very quick overview of these things, but it's I think helpful to, at least hopefully people are finding it helpful to to see what the overview of what organizations do in our system. So here's an example of an organization that is set up with branches. And you can see why, hopefully. I know it's probably a little small. The Forest Service has an extremely complicated setup where they have a lot of water rights throughout the whole state. And so in this case, they have the water rights for each national forest set up as branches. And so, when you look at the water rights owned by the Forest Service, you'll see any water rights, under this account will show as owned by the Mendocino National Forest. But staff can be linked to the overall U.S. Forest Service and be able to see water rights for anything under it. Additionally, they can assign staff that just work for an individual national forest and assign them directly there. And then those folks only have to worry about looking and managing the water rights under their particular branch. Let me show you one more example of this, just to give you another flavor of it, because there's, I think that's one example that is pretty clear. Here's another example where there's a slightly different need to organize things like this. So, there's a lot of wineries, and also I know a lot of ranching needs where, there's maybe multiple generations of family over time that have created different namings where you need the names of who owns each water right to be distinct. And in some cases, they're completely different, but they're still managed from a water rights perspective by a handful of people across all of those. So here's an example where, there's a different way that we can use the headquarters and branch to organize so that people can see and act on, though. And when I say act on, it's because, it depends on your relationship, more or less, or regardless of whether you're primary owner or agent, this is a place to organize these things so that you can act on all the water rights underneath it. Although asterisk on it is for agents, because agents do not need to set all of that up like this for all their clients. You just need to be explicitly marked as agent in our system, and we'll go over that this afternoon. So there are, if you can imagine, a lot of different ways we can do this. There are some needs where we can use this to make a single place to go over everything, or a single place to have people that, if it really is a collection of organizations that are all managed under one tree, there's a way that we can help you get those all put together. This is not, as I said, meant to enable being an agent, because that is another layer on top of it that as long as you have established in our system that you are agent, that kind of so let me again kind of show Wagner and Bonsignor, just to, I'm hopefully not confusing people, but Wagner and Bonsignor is just Wagner and Bonsignor. They are agent for hundreds of different people, but you don't see them under their account hierarchy because instead they are listed as agent for those people. And just by being agent for those folks, that is what gives them access to be able to see these particular records. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to take a quick look at the chat. The first question I see, I believe, is about reporting requirements. Um, Number one, there is no spreadsheet that is required now. There that I mean, it's really not meant to be the point of this webinar, but I will just say um, reporting requirements are the same as they were previously. So for this year, there are templates in the annual reports. They are optional. So if you do not have the data to fill those in, then provide data how you did last year. Um, our organization has changed its name. The old name is on the letter. Um, this is a great question because if you use the old organization's name, um, or if you use the pin, it will join you as that organization. So there are really two options, and part of it depends on how significantly it's changed. If it's a very minor change, that you dropped, a letter from the organization name, or it's still essentially the same organization name, it's just whatever it frames slightly differently. We can modify the name on the account for you. If it truly is a completely different organization name, what you most properly should do is file a change of ownership in our system. And if we have time, I can go over that very quickly afterwards. Um, I would join, and I'll show this in a second. I would join as a new organization with that new naming, and then file a change of ownership for the old organization and say that you are the new owner. Um, and also flag us in that so that we can help get that process. Um, does an organization have to be established? Uh, uh, if the water right is already shown as owned by a trust, then it basically already is established. If you're saying that you need to switch the water right to being owned by a trust, that again is a change of ownership, which we can help you with, and is also a form that you can fill out in the system. Um, but the short answer is if you already existed in our old system, and this goes for hopefully most of the people here, you probably existed in our old system. You don't have to recreate yourself. You should have gotten a PIN for the version of yourself in our old system. And that PIN, again, is meant to connect the CalWATRS account you create with our records from our system. So no, you don't need to recreate yourself, the organization, if the water rights are already shown as owned by that organization, whether that's a trust or not. Um, there are some cases where trusts in particular were accidentally marked as individuals. Um, if you have trouble using the pin in the join organization screen, let us know and we can help correct it on our end. And so the question is about receiving multiple letters. And this is another good one because on one side, we only have, so we have records in our system from our old system about what mailing address was listed with any given water right. There are people that, and I would reference what the exact name that with that letter was sent to says, because the PIN goes with that name on that letter, so who that letter was addressed to. So if you've received multiple letters, there could be a couple different reasons why. If all the letters you received are for the same name, that means that we had a couple different versions of you in our system, which did happen. There are people that, for whatever reason, and it's usually not your fault, it's our record keeping over time, a duplicate version of you was created, and so there's basically there's two legacy versions of you, and you got a letter for each of those. You can use both pins, and I'll go more into that in a second. But the short answer is when you use both the pins, it will merge those two things together so you're no longer duplicated. Now, if you got two letters and one says one organization name and another says another organization name, you should be careful on which one you use. And that might be a case where you need to reach out to us because um, I've seen cases, especially where the ranches may have similar but different names. Maybe you had reasons for filing water rights under one ranch name and a different ranch name at different times. Um, if you try to use the pins for all of them, it would also merge those together, which may not be what you want. So that either may be a case where we need to help you set up branches to retain those names, or it could be a case where um, you do want all of them to be in one name. Just again, our records are bad from the length of time over which we've kept them. Um, if it's the case where they really all should be under one name, this again is it really depends on how different those names are. If you got a letter for yourself as an individual and a letter for an organization you're a part of, that and they both hold different water rights, that would be a good case to contact us to make sure we understand clearly how to make sure you see everything in one place. I'll also say another flavor of this too is there are people that, especially if you were the agent in our system for your own organization, you will have gotten a letter for yourself, the organization, and a letter for yourself, the agent. You don't need to use both. You just you're free to choose either one, but there's no reason to be both the primary owner and the agent for a water right at the same time. And in hindsight, it would have been helpful if we had included that information in the letter to give you a little bit more details about it. We didn't, partially because the intent of the pins in the letter was that they migrated everything about you. But what we didn't anticipate is that there's a lot of complications, that people had multiple relationships to water rights under similar names. Can branches be established at a lighter time and water rights moved under it? Yes. And that's also a great question too, because of where we're at. It is December and your reporting is due at the end of January. If you're an organization that's considering creating branches to help staff, be able to distinguish who's doing what, my advice is yes, you can do that later, especially because it usually will require someone from the state side helping you set that up. I would suggest you migrate as you are, as the organization is currently set up, so that you can get water rights filed. And then after this recording season, we can help you create those branches and migrate the records needed into those branches. So that's definitely something that we can do later. Number one goal is getting you connected to your records now, so that you can get things filed. If I purchase a property, do I have to change of ownership before I file? So I'm assuming in this case, you may have gotten a letter for the previous owner. Yes, you should be filing a change of ownership. If you use the previous owner's PIN, it will overwrite that previous owner's record and show you as the owner. The problem with that, and that may seem like, well, that's a quick way to do an ownership change. The problem with that is it will show you as being the owner for the same length of time that previous owner was owner, meaning that if that previous owner had late fees or had any other issues with their records, you probably don't want to take over and make it shown that you were the owner the whole time as well. So if you got a previous owner's PIN, or if you got a PIN for someone, that at your address that is not in your name, and is no longer the owner, you should be doing an ownership change first. And if you have created a CalWATRS account, you can do an ownership change without being associated with any record. it sounds like that's something that would be helpful. So if there's time at the end, I will go quickly over what ownership change forms look like. Um, Organization has both appropriative rights and groundwater recordations. Yes, you will see both. I will also demonstrate this really quickly in just a second as well of the how of how to see this, because um, groundwater recordations don't, on the My Water Right screen, do not show up in the list of everything. But there is a distinct place for them in the annual reports. And if you have all of that, all of them are linked with your account. You just may not see them all in one place. Um, are we supposed to email you to set up our account if we have many rights? Not necessarily. So we had previously messaged that if you have a complicated setup, and when we said complicated or large, we meant like the scope of large water agencies or agencies that potentially need to set up branches. Just because you hold a lot of water rights doesn't mean you need um, to necessarily contact us first, because it could be that your water rights are actually pretty simple in that, if you got a letter and you got one pin, you might it could be 1,000 water rights linked to that pin, and that's fine as long as there's just one version of you. It's pretty easy for you to get in the system. That flag was more because um, large water right holders tended to also get duplicated in our system, meaning that there was more things to do to get all your water rights in one place. And when I say large, I mean 100 plus. Most people with 10, 20 water rights, even into the up to 100, usually are fairly easy to set up. So there's nothing necessarily that would make you need to reach out to us first to join. Definitely go over change of ownership. What if it's a new owner? I'm assuming that's similar to the question of up the migrating pin. So I'll go over that when I go over the change of ownership. We're going to get a specific answer to you, since that's not necessarily what this is meant to be about the measurement devices, but we are going to type an answer out for you. If I have an individual water and an organization, I don't want them combined, should I migrate those in two separate accounts? Another great question. So I'll give you one version of this that I've seen, and then I'll give you the more complicated answer as well. So I have seen people that work for an organization and have an email for that organization, like a water agency, and they also happen to own water rights personally as well. What some people have done, and I think this makes the most sense if this fits, you should use your personal email to set up an account for your individual water rights. And you should use your organization email, meaning, if you work for a water agency, you're probably provided with an email address for that water agency. You should use that email to join the water agency's organization. And that keeps things separate. Now, there are cases where organizations are not necessarily a company or something that you're an employee of, but like that I'd shown with the wineries, it may be that there are family water rights that some are held as organizations and some are held under individual family names. We can set that up under a branch structure if that helps you. But if the case is more that you have personal things and work things, our advice is, create an account for a different account for each. You just can't use the same email more than once. So as long as you have a personal email and a work email, you can keep those accounts separate. I'll unable to use the drop-down menu for primary contact. Oh, I think I may know that issue there. Okay, I'll try to demonstrate that in just a second. but yeah, that is an issue if that's stopping you, and I'll see if I can demonstrate what your issue is. Um, so the question about multiple clients, um, the the agent specific part of that is the topic we're going to talk about this afternoon at the second webinar. But I will say this: you should not be using your client's pins. That is not the intent of the pins. So if you every time you use a client's pin, you are taking over their accounts, which you do not want to be doing. What's more likely is that you were never formally established as agent in our system, or it could be that maybe your pin just got lost in the mail. So I don't want to assume too much there, but we'll go into more details about that in the afternoon session. The short answer though is yes, you can create the organization if you need to, especially if you had never, a good example of that, if you would just used your client's login information, but never sent a change of ownership to us to let us know that you were being added as agent for those water right records, you wouldn't have gotten a PIN. Is it possible to set up the headquarters branch structure yourselves? You technically can set up branches yourself. And I'll try to demonstrate this in just a second. The main part of the why we recommend it is when you migrate records, you need to select what branch those records get migrated to, and it starts to get multiplicative, more complicated when you go down that route. So it's definitely something you can do yourself, especially if you're starting from scratch. But for existing water right holders, I think it's easier to contact us unless you're really comfortable with how the branches work and how account migrations work. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the, let's see. Is there a video on how the reporting requirements? There is a video on how to file in reporting overall. That's one of what I had showed at the beginning. There is a video about measurement, entering information for measurement devices, and there is a document that describes submitting measurement data in the annual reports. So those are all you can find those all at our CalWATRS resources page. Okay, I'm going to go back into the system. We've got about 12 minutes left, and show you what it looks like to file a change of ownership. So this is something, again, this isn't meant to jump right into what we're going to be talking about this afternoon with agents, but this is something that I think most people are doing most often to let us know that they are agent, because if we don't know that you have a relationship to a water right, you will not see that water right. Just because you filed in reports for that water right in the past doesn't necessarily mean you'll be able to see it, because if you were never listed as agent on that record, then we don't know that you should have access to it. And really quickly, while we're here, just because there was the question about groundwater recordation, I don't want to forget, when you're logged in and you're able to see records, this is where you file annual reports. One thing that people, or that has tripped up people a little bit, is that all the annual reports are not on one tab. There are different tabs depending on what it is. So for the case where you have appropriative records and groundwater recordation, you just need to click on the specific tabs to see and file annual reports for those records. So that's the where of, if you have multiple types. Same thing with statement or S type records, those are on a different tab. We are working on adding an all tab, I think it will be there within the next couple of weeks, but until then, just know that if you have multiple water right types, when you're in the annual reporting page, you just need to go to the different tabs to see those different types of rights. Okay, from the home page, how to file an annual report. What you want to do is go to the online services, and you want to go to water right requests. So, and you can see that it's called a change of ownership or agent. It was previously called a change of ownership. To us on the state side, that also means add an agent, but I think that scared some people because um, adding agent, is not necessarily changing the ownership, is modifying relationships in our eyes. But so just so you're clear, this, you can add yourself as agent without actually changing the ownership. But this is also where you, if you do need to change the ownership, you would select this. So when you get into the form, the very first question is about you. And so you're already logged in as either yourself or, assuming most of it here, because you're in an organization meeting, you're going to be part of an organization. So when it's asking you what your relationship is with the water right, it means the organization. So in the case where where someone said, the organization name changed, if you registered a new organization in here that's not associated with anything yet, do that first, and then come here and say, I am the, sorry, I picked the wrong one. I am the new primary owner. And when you say that, this will let you search for any given water right in here. And it only lets you put in, so you can see as I'm typing, it can be a little laggy sometimes, but as I'm typing, it only will show you valid water right. You also can put in a owner name, which is often very helpful because what that will do is it will show you all water rights for that owner. So I know there's a lot of times where you want to very quickly just say, yes, I'm agent for all of this owner's water rights, which you don't have to select them all. You can just select specific water rights. You could put them in one at a time through this water right ID search if you need to. Or you can just, if it is really everything by this owner, you can click this little box at the top here, and that quickly selects everything for this water right. And there's a lot of water associated, so it's just taking a sec to think about it. Because I said I'm the new primary owner, it already selects that, yes, I want to change the primary owner. It also gives you the option to keep existing primary owners and just move them to a non-primary owner. Very quick sidebar, primary owner is nomenclature that is in code primarily or mainly to establish who staff should contact first. If there are non-primary owners, you're actually all equal owners of a water right. You can have 10 co-owners of a water right. You're all equal owners of the water right. Somebody has to be designated as primary owner, though, for contact purposes, but that doesn't make them more of an owner than anyone else, if that makes sense. So you don't have to do that. I'm going to go back and show you a slightly different version of this because that's how you do this as the new primary owner. The other one that I think a lot of people are going to do is say, I am the new agent, which similarly, you can go through and put in a water right, and you can add multiple water rights. So I could add this water right, and then I can go in and look for a completely different one. You can see that it keeps updating, the screen here because it looks up who they are. And in this case, it's not letting me because I think someone already has change in process for them. probably because I am trying to do too many things at once. Um, when you're adding yourself as agent, you most likely do not want to change the primary owner. You can change it at the same time, but if you're just adding yourself as agent, you're probably not making other changes to the water right ownership. Because I'm logged in as a state water board, it already knows who I am. And so it's going to ask who the primary contact is. Now, someone said that they were getting stuck on this page. I'm assuming that you put who the organization is. Let me see if I could recreate. Let me get past this, but I'll try to, if I have a second, recreate this. But the purpose of this is to try to, if someone exists in our system, you should be able to mark who they are. You're also supposed to be able to add a new contact, but if that's not working as expected, I can correct that. So you can also add, so in this case, adding myself as agent, or actually the state water board, because I'm part of an organization, is I'm just doing something on behalf of the organization. You can also make other changes to contacts needed if you need to. One of the key questions I wanted to get to is, because people have asked about this, it does ask who the mail receiver and bill receiver should be, because you can change it whenever you're doing any changes. If you do not want to, or want to make sure you're not changing anything, just mark both as the primary owner, because it's both. If you're adding yourself as agent, the mail receiver and bill receiver are already set to the primary owner. So if you don't want to change that, make sure to mark that there. I know that a lot of agencies, especially for bills, do not want to receive the bills. You can set these differently as well. You can set, depending on who you are as agent, that you want to receive mail, but you do not want to receive bills. And then there's comments that you can make here. That's the real basics of the change of ownership. I'll also note that we are prioritizing add agent ownership requests right now, and we're able to process those fairly quickly. I know there's some people that we're still catching up on those for, but just know that we are processing those fairly quickly, because we know that is a barrier for people to get into annual reporting. And for the specific person that had the question about not being able to add the primary contact, you can email me at jeff.parks@waterboards.ca.gov, or CalWATRS help. Either way, you can send me a question directly, and I'll make sure to get that answered for you. With a couple minutes left, I'm going to switch back. So can be mail sent to the agent and primary owner? The short answer is no. We need to know who, there needs to be one clear point of contact for staff to send things to. It's, I don't know how to explain it, except that, I understand there's a lot of variations of needs out there. But, from our staff perspective, we have to have, we need to know, especially for sending things like enforcement, that we have one clear point of contact to mail things to. That said, if you are working directly on a specific case, with, or in like an application, I would just ask that staff to make sure that you're included on things. But for like bulk things like notices that annual reporting is open, for example, or bills, those need to go to one party. Though I will note that part of the new system in general is that, because we now have everyone's email, if you are registered as agent, you will likely get emails for most things. So you may not get the official letters if you are not marked as mail receiver, but things like annual reporting opening up, next year when annual reporting opens up, emails will go out to owners and agents. So everyone, connected to that water right would get a notification that, in reporting is open. So there are cases with emails where that notifications will get sent to everyone. Hard copy mail, though, that's a lot bigger overhead for us. Definitely recommend consultants with clients attend the afternoon meeting. That is the purpose is to make sure people are aware of the slight difference when you're an agent for someone in using the new system. So yes, please attend the afternoon meeting. I think that puts us right at time. I really appreciate everyone joining. And as always, continue to send help requests at CalWATRS Help if you have a question, but please look at the resources page first to make sure there's not something there to help you there first. We've put a lot of time into putting resources there, and we are also behind on responses. So, we are catching up quickly, but there is still a lag time to us responding to help requests. So with that, I thank everyone. And if you are returning for the afternoon session, I'll talk to you there.